Why did you decide to come to college? For some, it was probably because you knew that a 4-year degree has become the very minimum requirement of employers seeking new hires in recent years. Others were just anxious to get out of their homes and escape their parents' tyranny. And for some, it was simply because there was never really an alternative. So they just went and made the best of it. But for others of us, it was because we were desperately seeking higher education, because we're looking to find something greater than what we already know. We were in search of the ideal place to expand our thoughts and our notions of the world. Poet and novelist Ben Okri said in his 1995 novel, Astonishing the Gods, that the universities were places for self-perfection, places for the highest education in life. Everyone taught everyone else. All were teachers, all were students. The purpose was to discover the hidden unified law of all things, to deepen the spirit, to make more profound the sensitivities of the individual to the universe, and to become more creative. But even if you were included in the first 3 groups, take into consideration what you had hoped to get out of your college experience, aside from a validating degree and your parents' approval. You were probably looking to make some new friends, have some fun, and hopefully learn more about yourself. And as Bell Hooks once said, one's reality is defined by others, so it's important to learn about others to further one's own identity. College is one of the first times many young adults have the opportunity to meet people of all different backgrounds and explore the world on their own, whether literally or theoretically, and even study abroad. But one of the best ways to learn about other people's culture is through food. The food we eat reflects every aspect of the culture we're defined by. It chronicles our history, it speaks to our religion and our values, and it's evidence of everything from our socioeconomic background to our personal preferences. I recently read a story about a reporter who went to interview a 62-year-old Hmong woman living in Wisconsin about how her culture affects the way she eats thousands of miles away from her home in Laos. She led the interviewer into her basement, which was fraught with pumpkins, cucumbers, squash, and ginger, and an unusual amount of, quote, herbs to boil with chicken, others to mend an ailing bladder, and a plant that resembles taro with big fanning leaves. The woman later explained that when she was growing up, she was raised to believe that these leaves had medicinal properties. After a little research, I discovered that Laos's healthcare system was in relatively poor shape, even as recently as the 1990s, and poor sanitation, unhealthy water sources, and tropical diseases were rampant in the country. According to the 2005 Human Development Statistics, the life expectancy was around 63 for females and 65 for males. That's a whopping 12 and 15 years less, respectively, than in America. After living in a country where health and healthcare have only improved within the last few years, this woman maintains the essence of her culture through the food she cooks now. And I learned all this from the herbs she uses to season her dinner. Another example of how I learned about culture from food was in my high school comparative religion class. My teacher, who was Jewish, brought in the staples of Shabbat dinner. She prepared a table in the front of the class with a white tablecloth and set up 2 unlit candles on either side. And she brought in fake wine and 2 loaves of challah and explained the importance of these foods to this weekly practice. It gave those of us who weren't Jewish a glimpse into a culture and a religion that we weren't familiar with before. I personally know that learning about foods can help you learn a lot about cultures, firsthand. Growing up in the US can be strange sometimes when your parents weren't born here. While other children's parents were teaching them how to do things, my parents and I had more of a symbiotic relationship. They taught me things and I taught them right back. But one of the things that I most loved learning from my parents was about the food from their respective countries. You see, my dad was born in Guyana, in South America, and while its inhabitants are mainly black, the country has traces from Africa, India, France, Britain, Portugal, and the Caribbean, and American culture, just to name a few. Ergo, the cuisine has just as much of an identity crisis. While we consider ourselves Caribbean at times, one of the most prevalent dishes is roti and curry, a staple in Indian cuisine, and can range all the way to an Amerindian stew called pepper pot. And my mom is from Ethiopia, where the majority of the population is either Muslim, Ethiopian Orthodox, or Jewish. All 3 religions prohibit the consumption of pork. And since my mom was raised Ethiopian Orthodox, we've never eaten pork in our house. I remember a time when we visited an Ethiopian restaurant in Northwest DC called Etete, right after I became vegetarian. And I was extremely depressed because I couldn't eat any of my favorite foods that had meat in them, so I ordered a plate of spaghetti. Then I stopped and thought, why had I ordered a plate of spaghetti at an Ethiopian restaurant? Mom schooled me right there and told me about how Italy had annexed and occupied Ethiopia after the Second Italo-Abyssinian War, and how many of the cultural aspects of Italy blended with Ethiopia, and that's why I was chowing down on spaghetti in one of the most popular Ethiopian restaurants in DC. As you can see, food can easily embody a culture spirit. So the next time you want to broaden your horizons or take a trip to a foreign land, go to your local ethnic restaurant and take a bite out of history.